evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Will you please give a warm welcome to award-winning actor and screenwriter, Ben Willbond.
Thank you so much.
No worries, it's an absolute joy to have you here. And I think
that was it's quite nerve-wracking walking straight down the middle of that aisle.
Yes, it's a bit of a, you've got sort of everyone looking at you from the sides. Thanks so much for coming. How this is going to work, we're going to do about half an hour with me talking to Ben, and then we're going to open up to you for questions. You can just put your hand up, we'll get a mic to you, and ask away. So yeah, I think
Brilliant.
Where I wanted to start was in the early days of your career.
Yeah.
I believe you did quite a few shows at the Edinburgh Fringe, which were based on various kind of eclectic characters. I was wondering what it is throughout your career that's consistently drawn you to this like character-driven comedy.
It's really hard. It does go back to university, actually. It's because I knew I wanted to act and try being on the stage, see what it felt like. It was another one of those moments at university where you're just going to try, give something a go. But I had this kind of, and that sort of kicked on from school, because my school was a very odd school, and there wasn't much arts and enjoyment really. And but when I was about 15, I did a school play and I loved it. And I think it's just that feeling of being on stage. So when I was at university, I thought, I'm going to give this a go. But I don't fancy doing The Cherry Orchard or something really sort of serious. I wanted to hang out with the comedy club and see what they were doing. And a lot of people trying stand-up at the time, and I tried my hand at that, and it was just terrifying. And I think it was terrifying because it was me. When you're a stand-up, you can hide behind a little bit of a persona, but that's all. And I found it was just too uncomfortable. And then I started doing sketches and characters, and it was a lot more comfortable. I just found it a lot more enjoyable. And thrown into that was a lot of satire. And it just sort of went from there. It just felt like the right sort of place.
Yeah,
you mean sense.
Yeah, you said it went back to university. Could you share with the room which university that was? Can you share with the room which university that was?
Yes, it was Oxford. It was the other place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll forgive you. Since then, a lot of your work has been with, obviously, the Them There Collective, Horrible Histories, and so on. What do you think it is about that group that makes it such a great dynamic? And are there any particular pairings within that group who you think have quite a unique dynamic?
So I think, I'd spent probably about 10 years since leaving college to sort of starting Horrible Histories. So that was an awfully long period of time, and there were lots of moments in that period where I just thought, what are you doing? I mean, a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my friends from university were, really kicking on in their careers. And it just felt, I just kept saying to myself, no, you've got to, I was doing a lot of comedy clubs and started my own clubs and had already done a lot of Edinburgh festivals by then. But I was always looking for a group, always thinking, that sort of group dynamic isn't dead, it can't be dead. But it was very, very hard to find people to stick together and do a sort of continual sketch group. I had a friend from university, we did a sort of double act, and that lasted for as long as it sort of came to its natural end. And after that, I thought, God, it's really hard to keep people together. And then I was cast in Horrible Histories with, most of the people I knew. I didn't know Matt, I didn't know Laurence. Matt is still, I think, probably about 23 years old in my head. But I knew Simon, and I knew Jim, and I just thought, maybe this is the group. Maybe this is I didn't think it in that first sort of series. But then as we started doing sketches, we realized we were doing the kind of sketches we'd always done on the live circuit. And we were just doing them in caveman outfits or dressed as Henry VIII or whatever. And they were the same sort of sketches. And it just, I think we were all really, by then, just desperate to do that kind of comedy. Like, we hadn't had an outlet. It was really hard to keep it going. Certainly not on TV. The sketch comedy had sort of had its heyday. You know, Big Train had happened, and you couldn't top that. If you get a chance, go and watch Big Train on YouTube. It was just like the pinnacle. And so it was like, and then broadcasters were saying, well, we don't really want to do sketch shows anymore. So Horrible Histories was a real sort of outlet, because we were doing a sketch show, just sort of under the radar. And as it progressed, when we came back for series 2, it was just brilliant to be in the same room as everyone again and to go, John, I just think this is working. This is really good fun. And we just had a lot of fun and made it our own space. And so it felt like we sort of had to stick together, or at least we all felt quite determined that we wanted to stick together. It was quite a hard prospect.
You mentioned in there about having to sort of sneak in a sketch show in a sort of cheeky way.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could walk us through, you've been involved in putting together a lot of shows, obviously Horrible Histories, Yonderland, and then also films like Bill. What is that process like of starting with an idea and having to get that through the people in power who have to agree to it?
Well, I spent the last year, it's been, this last year just gone, so we finished Ghosts in March last year, and I didn't realise how tired I think everyone was. You know, we'd done 5 years, and it was a big show, and, you know, everyone sort of went off to do various things. And I then sort of, about this time last year, said, right, I've got, you know, several ideas I need to get up and running. Surely now the BBC will take a meeting, you know, if I present an idea. Turns out it's no easier now than it was back then. It's always been a really tricky, delicate process. It's only easier now in terms of you sort of I've grown up with the people who are now they were all sort of hanging around the circuit at the same time I was starting out, and they're all now sort of working in various TV companies and, you know, various broadcasters. So you sort of know they're familiar faces, and you say, oh, I've got this idea about this. Oh, yeah, it's great. We'll definitely set up a meeting. You know, sometimes it just doesn't happen. Other times it does. But selling an idea is still a really, really hard thing, because you've got to convince. You've got to be most of all, you've got to be a salesperson, but you've also got to totally believe in your idea, and then you've got to, you know, all the fates have to align, because Sky might be looking for a sort of buddy comedy set in I don't know, paramedics, and they're buddies, but they're from different sides, and they might be looking for something like that, and you come in with a slightly different buddy comedy, and they go, oh yeah, but we've got this idea that we think is going to really work. It might be that you get lucky. Other times you'll pitch something that's completely left field, and they'll go, no, and then call you back maybe 2 weeks later and go, actually, you know what, that idea, maybe. So it just, I don't know, I've never been able to sort of unlock the secret room where people go, come on in, let's go and make some shows. It just doesn't seem to.
Yeah.
You know, it's a hard process.
I can imagine. I'm going to ask a few questions specifically about Horrible Histories now.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I'm used to it.
I think there's a lot of people in this room who watched it when they were growing up.
Oh God, makes me feel so old.
And for him, it probably still quite a core place in their heart. I was wondering, what do you think it is about the show that stuck with people so much?
Okay, so I knew pretty much straight away that it was going to work. That's a very bold statement, isn't it? But So we had, very early on, our producer, Caroline Norris, she was, she is a very, very accomplished comedy producer. And she'd worked at the BBC, she produced lots of sketch shows, crucially. And she'd been trying to sell the idea of the book as a comedy sketch show to the BBC for a long time. And they go, no, because it's educational. So you can't educate people by making them laugh. Come on, it's got to be serious. You know, it's got to be war walks. It's got to be men in tweed suits walking around cathedrals. So, and she was going, no, I really do think that if we do it as a sketch show, it will educate and entertain. And in our first rehearsal, so I was delighted to get the job. I was really surprised because I just, you know, hundreds of auditions and not getting anything. And then I got the job, and I was just delighted. And then I realised that Jim was doing it, that Simon had been asked, that this young upstart called Matthew Bainton had been. I remember getting to know Matt a bit and said, "Do you think?" In the first rehearsal, I said, "Do you think maybe we should do this like the sketch shows we love, that we've grown up on? Let's do it like that." So, for example, if there's a Roman centurion, we're not going to do a ridiculous Italian accent. We'll just do it like just two blokes talking down the pub. And he goes, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So we rehearsed the first few sets, and the director was like, yeah, I don't know, could you do it as like a funny accent? We're going, no, because that's going to get wearing really... I mean, sure, in certain circumstances, don't get me wrong, there will be very ridiculous accents, but you know, the kind of pedestrian sketches, the ones where there's a lot of information to get across, and there's a very silly setup, you just think, actually, that's going to be really funny if it's just two blokes down the pub. Like, why are you carrying that spear like that? Well, I don't know, because I've always carried it like that. And it was just sort of the tone of the sketch shows that we loved. And then after we'd done that first series, which looking back was quite, you know, we hadn't quite hit the right sort of tone, but then when we came back for series 2, we just went full on for that sort of silly, these are just normal people. They would have just been normal people. Vikings who just are quite polite and just argue in a side, what are you doing? I'm gonna kill this guy, and then I'm gonna, you know, it's ridiculous because you're dressed in ridiculous attire and you're just speaking in a normal voice. So I think at that stage we kind of knew this was working as a sketch show, and we were sort of getting away with it.
Yeah, I think it's really great how Horrible Histories, it mixes the ridiculous with the sort of modern, mundane, whether that be those historical characters acting weirdly normally, or a sort of normal situation or a modern serious situation with weird and wacky characters. Yeah. Like you had the recurring character of Mike Peabody.
I mean, ridiculous. But I took that on as a challenge because I loved how serious, particularly sort of frontline war reporters are. Don't get me wrong, it's a horrendously difficult and dangerous job. But there's something about how they talk to the camera with flat going, you're just going, I think you might love yourself a little bit. So you kind of take that on and you try and play with that as much as you can, knowing that there'll be parents watching and going, what are you doing? And the kids are learning and enjoying the performance. So yeah, there was a lot of that going on. Yeah. A lot of that. And a lot of decisions being made in the makeup chair. So you get a ridiculous... I cannot tell you how many beards I've had slapped on my face. Turns out everyone in history had a beard. And we were sitting in the makeup chair reading through the sketches going, how are we going to do this? Right, you do that, what's that voice that you do? Yeah, you do him, so you do that, and I'll just do this for you, okay. And we would just share out, we would just make sure the balance was right before we went and filmed it, because we really didn't have long at all. It was a bit like filming, apparently like filming Doctors. You just get one take. So actors go in, you know that daytime show, there's lots of testing ground daytime shows like, I think it's finished now, Doctors, but they would, actors I've spoken to, they come on and go, yeah, I've got a part on Doctors. They think, great, I'm going to get in my costume, and then they go on set, and then they go, okay, let's roll up, let's go for a take. And they're like, okay. They go for it, and they go, right, moving on. You go, what? No, I thought, was that not rehearsal? And they go, no, we don't have time. We've got to... And that's kind of what Horrible Histories is like. You get sort of 2 goes at it. So we had to plan it all sort of through very bleary, sort of glue-filled eyes and beards in the morning in the makeup trailer.
Are there any of the sketches that you now look back on particularly fondly, or you think maybe even had the potential to be expanded into something bigger?
Yes, most of them. I look back now on some of them, and of course my kids now, one's still in primary school, the other's in secondary school, and they come back and go, oh God, Dad, oh God, you're on telly again. And everyone looks at me, I'm so sorry. But it's, I think they, sorry, that was a sidetrack, but yeah, there are loads I look back at and think, oh, I wish I'd done that differently. You always look back and do that when you see yourself. You go, whoa, what are you doing? No, oh God, you've done that. Oh God. But that's just sort of built experience, I guess. But yeah, there's loads I look back on and just say, I wish we could do it again. We probably, they might invite us back to a special.
Maybe. I think that would be the dream come true for quite a lot of people out there.
Great.
Are there any historical figures you wish you could have portrayed?
No, I think I got some. I think I got the juiciest ones. I mean, day one of filming it, I got to set. Caroline, the producer, was there, and she went, right, we're starting with the big one. We're starting with Henry VIII. They put this massive, great prosthetic, which didn't sort of make the cut. It didn't continue. And she had this great thing on. She said, what voice are you going to do? I have no idea. I mean, literally the first take, this voice came out. I thought, well, I'm stuck with that now. I mean, it was that sort of quick, the turnaround. Crazy.
Yeah. Given how contested history sometimes is, particularly nowadays, were you ever concerned about the impact you might have by portraying a certain event or character in a certain way?
That is a really good question. I did an interview recently where the interviewer was it was right at the end of the interview, and he said, do you not think some of the stuff you did was pretty irreverent? You go, yes, I don't know if you've seen the show. But what he meant was the recent history. So World War II, sort of going up to, we didn't go beyond, we did a little bit, but up to World War II, and you realise how, you've got to be quite careful, really. And I do think there would be things that we shot that we couldn't do now, certainly, because there's much more sensitivity around it. But I wonder. I think it's still good as I think it still works as a jumping off point to explore the history. I think if you're a teacher or you're watching it, it makes you want to ask questions. That's a good thing. I don't think you'd be too skewed. Like Jim Harrick's portrayal of Nero, for example. Do you all remember that? He just portrayed it like this guy, just doing like this. I remember talking to him about doing that character. I said, you know those guys that hang around in All Bar Ones in Fulham? He went, yeah, those guys. Like these guys really kind of, and he said, yeah, that's the voice I'm going to do. And that's perfect. But I think, I think the facts that spin off those sketches, you sort of watch them because you're watching Jim do that magnificent sort of silliness, but all the facts that are sort of spit off that crazy wheel, you can pick up on those facts and run with those, and sort of you might have a slightly distorted picture of Nero in your head for a while, but you know what? I don't know. I think that's okay.
I mean, famously, some of those facts were gotten across through a musical format. Did you enjoy doing the songs, and do you have a favourite song?
Okay, listen, for my entire life, everyone said, yeah, it's interesting when you sing, isn't it? It's interesting. So I was always massively self-conscious. And when I went to record the songs, you could see because Jim and Matt are both. Jim was am I going to get this wrong? He was at a drama school that was specialised in musical theatre.
They like to hit the notes sometimes, didn't they, during the...
Yeah. but he's a wonderful singer, and he has that sort of natural talent. So he would sing these songs beautifully. He would also tell me about the lunch queue in his drama school. He said, God, it was excruciating because they'd all be in the lunch queue going, please may I have a baked potato? It's like, oh, shut up. Anyway, his voice is wonderful. Matt's so musical. And I would always feel really conscious that I was not hitting the right notes. And they had to use a lot of autotune. But when I got into the swing of it, I did sort of enjoy it. But I'm not really a song and dance man. I'm too shy. Even hiding behind a character. It's weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we're going to move on now to talking about ghosts. With the same sort of cast of people, but in a very different way.
Yes.
A different format.
Yes.
How did you find working with the same, well, mostly the same group, but in a show that's, obviously still both are both for adults and children, but in different kind of ways. How did you manage doing that differently? Yeah,
so the show was, we spent a lot of time after doing Bill, and Yonderland was like a sort of fever dream. It's crazy. For us, we always call it our sort of the wild years, because we was like, let's do what we want. And it's like, what are we doing? This is nuts. I was very keen to do something that had more story, more heart, and we'd toyed with the idea of doing multi-character stuff because we still felt that could work. We did a little scratch pilot. The BBC it was amazing that they agreed to do it, but we filmed about 11 minutes of a taster pilot, which we shot at the location. And it looks completely different to the finished product. But we made all the mistakes there. We made all, we're like, actually doing multi-character's not going to work. It's a bit, it sort of plays down a bit. And eventually we said, look, let's just settle on one character each, but let's do different periods of history, because that's what people know us from, and let's really dig into those characters and have fun with this sort of weird dysfunctional family. And at that point it was like, oh yeah, of course, it's a weird dysfunctional family, and then there's newcomers to the family, and the whole thing will sit very nicely in a sitcom format. But we'd still, unlike traditional sitcom, we still have the scope to tell a deeper story in the backstories of the characters, which was, the prospect of which after the sort of first series, we're like, this is great, because we can hold some off, we can, show some but not all, we can dip into little parts of their backstories, but not overdo it, keep everything in the present. So it was we sort of stumbled into it, really, and just went and thought, this is great, this is really good fun.
Yeah.
So let's do it for as long as we can.
How did you balance the comedic aspect of the show with the kind of existentially scary concept of being a ghost trapped for all eternity?
Well, I think that's quite simple, really, because it all just plays into the absurdity of life. I mean, we talked about it a lot, but not in any sort of... I mean, I'd have loved to debate it endlessly, but that's my education. I was like, but what does it really mean? The others were like, oh, shut up about that, come on. But it just fits wonderfully. It's like they're dead, but they're not dead, and they're in an afterlife, but that afterlife will suddenly be taken away from them. So it became a natural sort of metaphor for the absurdity of living and having to live with each other and to live in this kind of quite normal family setting. So it's sort of, I don't want to study it too much, but it's just a really nice framework. And it meant that you could really, in story terms, you could really dig into those moments where death and finality and absurdity and existentialism, you could really sort of highlight those and then go back to to your fun, just going, oh, well, Pat going, right, come on, let's all go back to the, it just sort of resets really nicely. Yeah, don't know if I explained that very well.
Yeah, you're in Ghost, obviously, the character of the captain. He's a very sort of stiff military figure.
Yeah.
I think you've spoken before about how you took inspiration from that, from the sort of people you were around when you were younger.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that has played into any other roles, or whether that's something you more prefer to define yourself against.
I really loved doing it because, yes, it was the sort of people I grew up with. I went to very military boarding school, and it was horrific. And they were absurd people. And it was in the 80s, so the spectre of the Cold War was, right there, and they would just be, it was terrifying. They were just like, it was essentially a sort of, you've got to learn how to strip this rifle because the Russians are coming. But those sort of characters, I was surrounded by those sort of characters, but also the sort of post-war societal legacy, and those kind of very stiff sort of people who would talk in clubs, and everything had to be just so. And I just kept thinking, it's so weird. That just doesn't, it doesn't fit now, and yet we are all still surrounded by it. So I was always fascinated by those characters. Grown up watching, Fawlty Towers and Blackadder, and they all had characters exactly like that, running all the way through them. Class obsessed. Society has to be run in a very certain way. Don't step outside the bounds of it. And then the thought, that to make that character richer, and it really was a very, very quick decision at the start. When you're starting to work on characters, it doesn't matter in drama or in comedy, you have to create their flaw, the one thing that is they're going to struggle with, the one thing that they find hard to come to terms with. And for the captain, it was his sexuality. And of course, look, suddenly went, oh my God, yes, it has to be that, because it was illegal when he was alive. I mean, the mind boggles. And for him to be just stuck in that sort of military uniform and just not allowed to talk about it, and everyone just going, come on, mate, was just wonderful. Because it just sort of brings that character, to life in, it's kind of started as a cheeky shorthand, but actually developed into a really deep character study, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible set of characters on the show. It's part of why it's been so successful, and now internationally successful.
Yeah.
There's a US version, it's been going for a few seasons.
There's a French version.
Yeah, there's versions works, France.
There's a Greek version.
Yeah. What do you think it is that makes the show so adaptable?
Well,
how does it feel sort of seeing that happen to your idea?
It is amazing. I mean, you never think that you'll sort of be, my phone's going out, that you'll create a show that would have that sort of appeal. But I think again, after sort of series 1, series 2, it's like, yeah, this could happen anywhere. This is sort of timeless, and also speaks to the society of each territory it's in. So in America, it's obviously very different. I was saying before, culturally, incredibly different. In Germany, they've just started a version, and we're going, ooh, wonder what they're going to do with it. And you just see how they've kind of worked around that bit of awkwardness, and then in Greece, it is fascinating. But you know that you can have a cast of characters who all speak from different periods of history that can throw up all this wonderful comic tension in a house with two modern residents just going, sorry, what did you just say? It just, it's a lovely mix.
Absolutely. Before we go to the audience, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions about one of my favourite shows of all time, which is The Thick of It.
Great.
The Thick of It, you were Adam Kenyon, junior Lib Minister.
Yeah.
You were his original job was in the Daily Mail.
Yeah.
You appeared in one of the specials.
Yeah.
Were you surprised when you got called back to take a main role in Series 4?
Yeah, I was, but I was absolutely delighted because it was the best fun I think I've ever had on set. because a lot of the actors in that show, I think I'm right in saying, actors are a really funny bunch because they are very used to sort of being given a script and you say, okay, darling, all you have to do is you have to come in here, hit the mark, then look at me, then we'll come into your close. That all goes out of the window because there are 3 cameras around the room. And then you do the scene, and then whoever's directing steps in and go, okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's get a bit more energy. Don't worry about the words so much. Don't worry about the words. Just think, well, what is it? And then Armando would come in, he would sort of appear from nowhere and then whisper in someone's ear. And I remember him whispering in my ear, he goes, on this take, I really want you to go for... And you're like, what, physically? He goes, yeah, go for it. Because they've got 2 cameras, so you just get this thing and then this reaction. So everything's reaction more than, and it's a lot, not improv as such, but it's like this freedom to really be in the moment, which is what you want when you're acting. It's like being on stage. It's like the most freeing thing. And then afterwards you're exhausted going, what did we just do? I don't know. It's crazy. You're sort of allowed to be all of the character. And if you mess up the words, it's like, nah, it doesn't matter, we'll do it again. You're like, cool, this is great. This is how it should be. Sort of like the emphasis is more on, let's get the reaction, let's really poke the drama, let's make it feel like it's happening in real time. It has to, because it's politics and the theme changes all the time. It's just going like that, everything's ramping up all the time. You need that frenetic sort of atmosphere. It works so well. And they went on to do Veep, which is even better. But they just got better and better at writing their scripts.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the sort of free-flowing insults / getting insulted?
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. So me and Will, Will Smith, not that one, he now writes Slow Horses for Apple, which I'm so jealous of. But he's the loveliest guy, and we would just giggle so much about what we were going to say to each other before. He'd come up to me before a take and go, I've got something really special for you today. And I go, oh no, Will, don't do it. He goes, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then he'd just come out with something awful, and just really to try and make me laugh. But it was a really fun job. It was a lovely job.
Yeah. One more question from me before we go to the audience. What can we expect next?
Well, I don't know if you've heard of a film called Batman. No, I'm not the new Batman. I'm not the new Batman. I am trying to sell so many shows at the moment, it's getting silly. But I have one that I'm doing, which I'm so fond of, and I really, really hope the channel I'm selling it to bites hard, because I think it would be, it's like the thing I've always wanted to write, and there's a lot of a lot of not very well hidden social satire in it, and questions, and like, what just happened? So I don't know, I'm just hoping that I can sell that next year. But if I can't, then I don't know, probably Henry VIII doing songs on the bottom of a pier somewhere. I think such is the life of an actor.
Whichever of those routes you take, I think we'll all be there to watch. So, let's go to the audience for some questions. Just stick your hand up and we will get a mic over to you as soon as possible. Shall we go over there in the third row in the grey?
Hello,
Hi.
big fan. I grew up loving Horrible Histories so much, but arguably my parents loved it even more. My dad still quotes this is the noose at 10 as peak comedy. But when you were filming it and thinking about the sketches,
yeah.
How aware were you of kind of trying to appeal to 2 generations, or were you more focused on the children and it kind of was just like a happy accident that adults loved it too?
Honestly, I never got the impression that we went out onto set in any other way than just to make a sketch show, just to make a funny show. And that's how we approached it. Honestly, we were just trying to make each other laugh all the time. And I only wrote a handful of sketches. Laurence, who I think he came down before, didn't he? So absolute genius. I mean, he was really at the coalface working with Caroline, just going, okay, so we've got to do the sketch this way because we know that, that will be palatable to children and we're getting the facts across, but we're also getting the silly across. But in terms of performing it, we just did it as a sketch show. I think that's probably why we got it to work, I think. Yeah.
Okay, just here in the front.
Thank you. Yeah, big fan. I was just sort of wondering, you sort of touched on, growing up watching Blackadder and Fawlty Towers. Who were your sort of comedic idols, growing up and even now? And not to put you on the spot, but may you give me a handshake that's sort of like the captain be proud of?
So the captain would certainly come over like that, and he would absolutely do that.
Amazing, thank you.
Probably not look you in the eye. Who did I? Yeah, I mean, those. What I loved about the comedy that was on when I was in that sort of formative period was comedy wasn't really made. It wasn't like it was labelled. By the time I got to work in TV, everyone was labelling everything. Yeah, I'm going to blame Channel 4 for that. This is a comedy for young adults. This is a comedy for teens. This is a comedy. You're like, what? Isn't it just a comedy? It's like, you don't go, this is a thriller for 16 to 18-year-old. No, it's a thriller. It's a story. So I kind of, I just always remain baffled by that. So, because I would just watch whatever I could. I mean, I loved watching comic films. I love watching. I just hoovered as much as I could. Now that I think about it, but a lot of it was that when I was 18 and leaving school, we just watched Blackadder back to back, just going, how on earth are you doing that? It's just so great. It's like a stage show, but you're filming it. And then when you get to do it, you go, oh yeah, just do a stage show and film it. It's fine. I just adored it. I just thought it was, the gag rate was so high. It was just like jokes all the way up. It was lovely. Yeah. I feel like I've got to come back and give you some really more obscure things. I'll think about it tonight about 10 o'clock. Oh, I should have said that.
Should we go just here in the fourth row in the jumper? Yeah, you.
Hi, hey. I'm a shouty man. And
Very good. I was waiting for the first person to do that.
I wanted to know what your experience was like at the Fringe. How did you make it work? How did you stay afloat? What was it like?
Well, it was, I loved it. Every time I did it, I loved it. Until the last year I did it, where I just thought, what am I doing? So it just got very repetitive. And I went back recently, and it kind of hasn't changed. It's weird. It was hard. It was hard because you had to sort of outlay a lot of money to take yourself up there and put yourself about. But there was that lovely sort of competition in the air about whose show was doing well and who, could you draw a big enough crowd? And I made a lot of mistakes. I made a hell of a lot of mistakes. And there are a couple of years that really stood out where I thought, actually, you know what? I think I can do this. And then other years where I just thought, what? Why didn't I join the army like they told me to? It was just, but it's expensive, and you have to be really focused to make it work, like anything. But then not forget to have fun, because the audience will tell. They'll just go, I don't think these people are having much fun, actually. It's a distant memory now, but I do mostly just remember laughing a lot. and enjoying the different nights. You know, some nights you perform and bring the house down. The next night, just people sitting there in stony silence. You're going, I'm not doing it differently, am I? I don't know what. It really, you know, it just teaches you so much. You come back off in Edinburgh and you're just like, you don't realise it, but you've learned just so much about surviving. Yeah, it's fun. It's good fun to do, but yeah, get an investor.
Let's go just here at the front.
Hello, also a big fan.
Hey.
I'm someone who's like got more involved in like performing since coming to university as well, but I kind of gravitate more towards dramatic scripts. So I wonder if you have any advice to transitioning towards comedy, like getting to a headspace to perform comedy, and also how you might deal with like non-responsive audiences or people laughing at the wrong time or like not at all.
Well, that's an in-the-moment thing, I think. And actually, I think with that, if you're performing like a piece of comedy that you know works and it's not getting a sort of response, I think it's mainly down to there's something about a room of people you'll know whether they're on your side or not. I still remember that from doing all those live shows. It's a really odd feeling. You know the moment that you've got them. Stand-ups talk about it a lot. You know, that terrible sort of fear when they go on. I mean, that's not a bad place to start, actually, just to challenge yourself. Just do like an open mic, 5 minutes, write your set or co-write it or whatever, and just test yourself against an audience and get used to that sort of feeling of when you sort of hook them. And that's the one thing I love about watching, because I know a lot of stand-ups and I'm still baffled by why they do it. So why on earth would you do that? It's the most terrifying thing. But they say, look, it's great. They're basically, you're sort of inviting them into your brain, just going, why is it that people always do this? And the minute you've got them, they're on your side. The minute you lose them, you've lost them. You've got to get off the stage really quickly. It's a very, it's a weird place, but it's a very good place to learn that sort of relationship. But the other thing to know is that if you're doing a play or a sketch, you're relying on your team around you. And that's a really precious thing. If you've got people around you who support each other, and that's what you get when you do a play, you get that lovely sort of support structure where you know whatever happens, you're going to, you know, the play is happening and it's just going to keep going. But you've got really solid support and they're also relying on you. That's a lovely feeling. And it's like, you know, sometimes the audience will just not be in the mood. I can't answer it any tighter than that. I'll have to, yes, another thinker. Yeah, I reckon, do an open mic. See how it feels. That's a really good challenge. Yeah.
Let's go right at the back in the red over there.
Hello, it's sort of similar to the last question, but I was wondering if you had any advice for someone who wants to go into acting after they graduate.
So I think I never went to drama school. I graduated and then I moved to London and I thought, I think I know what I want to do now after a massive 4 years modern languages degree. And I had no money, no support, and I just couldn't afford it. But I would say a year course, acting course would certainly, by the time you finished that, you'd know whether it was something that you felt like you wanted to continue. Because what I think acting courses don't teach you is how hard everything else around it is. You know, they don't tell you that there's going to be a year will go by and no one wants you, and it's just like and you know I mean I always wanted to write, but that became much more of a necessity for me, because I just thought, I'm not going to get those parts, you know, that these guys over here are getting. I'm just not going to get them. So what am I going to do? I'll do this. I'll create those parts for myself. And that's why I started writing, and then, you know, the rest all sort of followed. But straight acting is such a vocation, I think. It's like, I'm always so impressed by actors who, they go, no, that's what I do. That is what I do. And I audition, and when I audition so well. You know, I'd seen people prepare for stuff and just going, flipping heck. I just turned up with a, yes, that's why you're not getting the roles. But a year at drama school will give you all that foundation that you need for performance and for breathing and for all the preparation that I simply never had, and had to sort of learn on the go. And it's still a kind of, you know, certainly in theatre, people say, where did you train? I went, well, I didn't really. Oh. You know, you still get that sort of like, oh. It's very weird. So it's worth considering if you're serious about it, doing at least a year at a drama school.
Let's go over there on the sort of fourth, fifth row. Yeah, you there. Just stand up. It might be easy. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Josie. I was just wondering, you spoke a lot about having a group that you work with, people you have a good dynamic with, and you work with basically the same cast between Horrible Histories and Ghosts.
Yeah.
I was just wanting to ask whether there's a comedian that you would really like to work with in the future, or any other actors that you think you'd have a good dynamic with and you'd enjoy working with them.
Oh, man. I would... who would I love to work... I mean, do you know who I really would love to work with? And this is absolutely deadly serious. I would love to do a scene with Tom Cruise, just to see what it was like. I have a friend called Rob who's done more and more in feature films. And he's just like, man, it's crazy. And just tells me these things. I'm going, that just sounds amazing. Like, that sort of level of hugely accomplished filmmaker, performer, film star would just be, I'd love that. Because it would be crazy. You'd be on set all day just going, this is just mad. Isn't this mad? Just talking to people. It would just be amazing. But it's not going to happen. But, well, it might. Other comedian, oh God, there's so many. There's a lot in the US I'd love to work with. I mean, all the names are escaping me now. But I mean, there's a kind of, there's a sort of SNL, Saturday Night Live community that you just think, God, I would love to be in a film with you guys, because you'd just be on all the time, and it would be a completely different experience. I'd love to play a sort of bumbling English landowner. No, you can't do that. Come along. No. And then have a sort of crazy team around. It'd be amazing. Yeah, that's all I can think of. So what was the other part of the question? Sorry. Oh, that was it. Oh, yeah, that was it. Okay. Tom Cruise, if you're watching, I'm free for the rest of next year.
Let's go right at the back there, in the glasses. Yeah.
Thank you. You kind of touched on it a little bit in an earlier question when you referred to your writing, but as an actor-writer, you always hear kind of in the peanut gallery that you have to pick one, and do you ever feel pressure to kind of confine your talents to one genre, or do you enjoy being interdisciplinary?
I think I went through a bit of a phase in the last couple of years where I was just really doing Ghosts all the time and not really getting any other acting work, and I was kind of fine with that. And then, but the comedy world is so small in this country that you inevitably you sort of get typecast. So I was getting lots of offers for roles of like confused dad or, city trader 3. It's just like, do I want to stand on a set all day? This comes back to the point of, if you're going to be on a set, be on a really exciting set. And of course, you don't get to choose that. The comedy world is very, very small. And I was sort of going up for more interesting stuff, but not feeling like very confident with it, and not that fussed because I was enjoying writing so much. And more, actually, I enjoy the process of storytelling and writing, which is, in itself a, whole other chat, I guess. But I've sort of now started to lean much more heavily into that area because it's just, I don't know, it's just endlessly fascinating. It's weird. It's like a lot of it feels like being back at college. So you have to do research. You have to sort of bury yourself in stuff and arm yourself, and then plot and plan how you're going to tell the story, and then you've got to think about structure and then characters, and it's a really lovely process, and I really enjoy it. And I'd love somebody to pay me to do that a bit more. And the acting, I was sort of like, yeah, it's fun. But after a while, you just go, oh yeah, you haven't really done. There's no real, or there's a list of about probably 15 actors my age who look exactly like me and are all working in sort of really big kind of, big things. And you think, well, they're doing that then. I'm just got to be tired dad number 3 or unreasonable man in shop. No, look here, I'm not, that guy. And it just, after a while you just go, well, that's not much fun. It's just standing around on set waiting to hit a mark, and it's not, So, it sort of waxes and wanes, and I think, it's nice to be able to go, do I want to do that? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go over here and try and sell that show this week. It just sort of, it like everything, it swings back and forth. But I'm sure, after this, Tom Cruise will come calling, and I'll just be like back here going, yeah, Mission Impossible 9 was amazing. I spent all the time in the Italian Alps skiing. It was great.
If Tom Cruise ever comes here, we'll be sure to ask him.
Yeah, please do.
His ideal comedy duo is. I think he'll say Ben Willbond.
Can you imagine?
You never know. Right. Let's go right at the back there.
Hi. So one of my earliest memories was actually gate crashing the taping outside the Royal Albert Hall of the BBC Proms.
Oh, really?
And that is to say, Horrible Histories was a really big part of my childhood. And so when I came back about 5 years later and I saw the cast had changed and there was a special about Brexit,
yeah.
I felt genuinely quite sad also because of Brexit, but also because for me, it was as though a part of my childhood had gone. And so I can imagine for you, letting go of Horrible Histories and Ghosts was a really emotional experience, but I can assume you were ready to move on. So what was it like going through that period with the people you've been friends with for so many years, and how did you move on from that part of your life?
It was really hard to finish Ghost, but we never said we'd stop working together. So I think just we knew it was the right time to stop, because when we were writing the 5th series, there were moments in the writing room when there were sort of kind of quite big silences where we're all just going, and you're just kind of grappling for story, and you're trying to sort of, maybe not, no, we did that one, yeah. And it becomes harder. And stopping when we did was the right thing to do. But it's really hard because in America, say, which is like a kind of crazy factory, I was saying before, it's like, if you're in LA, it's like an industry. So when they're doing Ghosts in LA, they're like, yeah, we're going to make this for years, man. It's like they are, and they have a massive pool of writers, and it just churns because they have an audience. And they're going, why on earth did you stop? You've got an audience. But they don't realize that the writing process here is, there's 4 of us in the room, realistically, because Simon is writing all the blockbuster comedy films now. You know, there's 4 of us in the room and 4 or 5 of us in the room, and we're like, it's a lot to keep spinning, and we needed to just have a pause. And that's how I felt anyway. And but I think we'll come back together and do something really brilliant, and that will pay probably millions of pounds. It won't. But yeah, never say never. I mean, we'll do something else. I'm pretty sure. But also we've got to kind of, Matt's doing some Shakespeare now in London, and Jimmy's doing just amazing. I mean, he's just one of the most talented comic performers I've ever. I mean, he's just so brilliant, and getting the jobs that he absolutely deserves. So, we've got to go off and do other things for a bit. Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got time for 2 more questions. So let's go just down here in the green.
Right, hello.
Hello.
I was just wondering, are there any characters, say, in modern British public life who you think in a few years' time will be apt for Horrible Histories caricature?
Yeah. Come on, you know who they are. I mean, most of the last 10 years of Conservative government, surely. You just can't. You just go, well, I mean, it almost writes itself. It does, it writes itself. I mean, this is why I was saying before, you can't really. Trying to do satire now is, you just go, yeah, that would happen. I mean, everything's just gone flipped on its head. Such a bizarre 15 years to have lived through, and we're not even started yet. I mean, it's just crazy. But yeah, I mean, loads. It's kind of what I'm trying to do now, in a roundabout way, because you just go, hang on, did that just happen? It did. Yes, it did just happen. Oh my God. How do you then satirize that? How do you create those characters that people actually believe and want to watch? Because the ones we've watched are just like, how do they do that? How are you doing that? Lying on camera, just confidently lying. Amazing. It's like, what? You are what? Yes, yeah, that's what happened. But it isn't. Yes, it is. And then just walking out of the room, like, oh, I guess it did then. I mean, how do you write that? It's crazy. But we'll find a way. You'll find a way.
Hopefully. And for one final question, let's go just here on the left. Yeah, you.
Hi, myself and my family are massive fans of ghosts.
Oh,
I was
brilliant.
just wondering, when you were deciding which ghosts got which powers, how did you decide, like Robin's thing, like how did you decide? And were there any that like could have been but got thrown out early?
That's a very good question. We had to sort of decide. It's honestly a question of story planning, because we very early on we just went, well, they're ghosts, they can't do anything. Oh yeah. Oh, they can't. I mean, they cannot do anything. So how do we create that? Okay, so one of the people who are living there, they need to see them. Okay, so that's going to be Alison. So she'll fall out the window, bang her head. But she won't be able to interact. So how do we actually? So then we had to sort of slightly come up with our own version, and then not make it explicable, so it didn't become a drag on the story. So it's not like you're creating a sort of Harry Potter world where you go, this is what this spell does, and then that's it. You're going, well, Robin can do the thing with the lights, but we don't know how. And it also led to some really great moments of like, right, all the ghosts who can do something, go here. And it was always the captain saying that, and he couldn't do anything. So he's like, right, well, I'll sit this one out. So yeah, it was just a practical kind of story decision. Getting Julian to be able to touch things. Oh God. Honestly, the takes and takes of him doing his noise with his finger. Ah, God. Trying to put a band's name into the noise. The most successful one was Shawaddy Waddy that he got out. And everyone was like, Shawaddy Waddy! And pushed something over. I mean, ridiculous. But that helped really loads with story. So it's like, oh, we can do that thing. And then it's fine because Julian can press the key on the computer, or Robin can interfere with the lights, and that will create, it gives you that bit of sonic screwdriver that you need to push the story along. But yeah, after we had a couple of skills, it was like, yeah, you don't really need any more. Mary just making things smell like burnt toast. One of my favourites.
That is sadly all the questions we have time for. I'm going to have a couple of things to say in a second, announcements, but first of all, let's all say a big thank you to...
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.